My name is Tanya Curry, and this is this week's Acumen Media report. It's entitled Fat Cheshire Cats and a Week of Media Mayhem. If I have to tell you that we have tornadoes and floods in KZN, you're unlikely to be surprised. But if I tell you that the ANC are holding a cleansing ceremony for the province, and that Jimmy Manye, ex-ANN7, says that the ANC are manipulating the weather, then you're likely to ask me if I've started smoking again. I haven't. I read the news, so you don't have to. Welcome to the Acumen Media Report, where we scratch the surface of some extraordinary stories that crossed your timeline this week. Jimmy Manye, or Mzwanele Manye, as he prefers to be called today, wants us to believe South Africa has deployed weather-altering technology, as they have in Dubai, to make tornadoes wreak havoc in KZN. This is South Africa, Jimbo. Just pay someone, and havoc ye shall have. Remember the July insurrection? It paid no heed to the weather. Look, I like a conspiracy theory more than the next girl, largely because I read far too much news media. Rabbit holes are my thing. Just call me Alice. So don't even ask me about the Titan, because I'll eat the cupcake and drink the potion. Think that's a weird beninging to our weekly report? Hold on to your seats, as the Mad Hatter is now literally appearing at every corner. Would you believe me if I told you that 3 men who hijacked a tobacco truck were sentenced to 18 years? Would you believe that our president had someone else address us on the fact that he is never in the country and leaves us rudderless? Strange he didn't address us himself, no? Duh. He doesn't care. He's left us in the doldrums of what was once a wonderland. Would you believe me if I told you asbestos is giving church ceremonies? It's true, and you'll believe this bit. He is also putting his hat in the ring for president. You'll believe this as well. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo is in a fight with Parliament because he believes not a single thing has been done to prevent state capture 2.0.
If another group were to do the same, Parliament would still not be able to stop it. That is simply because I've seen nothing that has changed.
And they're unhappy about how vocal he has been about that. I like Zondo. Who doesn't? And you know who else I like? Mcebisi Jonas. Cast your mind back to the Gupta compound, back to the 8th circle of hell. Jonas is the guy who refused 600 million. Why can't these good people bandy together and form a party we can be proud of? Not a party that is here for just the coalition negotiations. But as PJ O'Rourke said, people who are wise, good, smart, skillful, or hardworking don't need politics because they have jobs. So instead, we have Paul Mashatile teeing up for president, and the dormouse is not in this teacup, it's filled with loot. The DA insists on a lifestyle audit of our incoming president, as his appetite for cash resembles that of a gluttonous, forever hungry pig that had his trough filled. I'm not done with my Lewis Carroll analogy. You'd think you'd find a smoking caterpillar the way I'm going. We're paying 55,000 Rand for a single soldier's uniform, and there are tenders for hospitals who need coal. I'm not making this up. And yes, I'm still a non-smoker. What about the water tankers meant to help those with E. coli-ridden water? Well, they turned up with undrinkable water. Why? Because 5 companies that tendered for the water tankers were all the same guy. And this is not confirmed yet, but the company has very strong links to Edwin Sodi, the same guy who took the tender in the first place years ago to make the water better. The water tanker tender alone is worth 90 million. And the hits keep coming. An ACDP councillor was murdered in church. A JMPD officer killed a SAPS officer with a blaze of bullets in a heated argument, and he's heard on a voice note saying that the slain cop was asking for it.
He wanted to shoot me outside the motor vehicle, and I tried avoiding, but he kept on saying, come out, come out. I could see good if I drive away, he will shoot. He just wants me out. The only option which I had was to shoot and make sure I paralyze.
They want to arm our cops now with drones. What could possibly go wrong? Keystone cops. The president fired the judge on the Senzo trial, which means we start from the beginning. And why is the president doing HR in the judiciary? I thought that would be the head of department's job, i.e. Sondo. There's bird flu, swine flu, snow in the Cape, and a teenage pregnancy pandemic where 10-year-olds are having children. It's holiday season and it's not possible to swim in Durban waters, not because of floods, but because of the poo in the water. Most politicians are now talking about moon pacts. Maybe they're going to jump over it like Little Boy Blue, and we all know how high John can jump. The Joburg mayor is incoherent. The Thabo Bester case brought an additional set of arrests, and I think we're at 12 or 15 now. I've lost count. I think they'll arrest a good 50 people, and then the trial will last longer than a Cheshire cat's tail. I've said the big stories for last as they deserve a lack of humour. 31 men presumed dead are still trapped in a disused mine that imploded because of methane gas. They are all illegal miners that saw their last days in darkness. We wait as they haul bodies from the deep. This is not a news story. This is a reality. The Zamas are illegal, and somehow we let this carry on because there is some fat cat at the end of the line picking up all those small nuggets at the expense of people's lives. We have seen protests all around the country. It's electioneering, good people, and we are simply in the crossfire. Soweto is on a knife's edge this week, and Diepsloot, the top story, made us understand the mess we are in. Diepsloot started to protest, and we all know when Diepsloot protests, stay indoors. Diepkloof Hostel houses 7,000 people with 70 buckets for ablutions. That was one of the many complaints that came out of the settlement. That, and the illegal residents that, according to locals, are behind the insane level of crime in the township. If you've ever been to Diepsloot, and I have, you'll know that people live in fear and squalor. This ain't no wonderland. Residents with good intentions lock themselves up before nightfall and don't leave. And this week, those residents had enough. And it's not the first time, but this time they refused a visit from Becky Cele. They wanted Ramachis himself. Ramaphosa couldn't care less about your bucket system, my fellow countrymen. He is ticking off his bucket list, swanning around in Eswatini this week and jetting across the waters last week. He is never home. He is so out of touch, and quite honestly, he tapped out a while ago. The community leaders in Diepsloot took to the streets. A CPF crime fighter was killed in the protest, and this incensed the fury that was molten lava to begin with. Then the news broke that there was a lift on the Zimbabwe temporary visas, and the foreign nationals were allowed to stay. This news sent further shockwaves through the community, and last night, several community leaders were arrested as violence escalated. Who knows what will happen today? Well, one thing we do know is Cyril will squirrel out of visiting the troubled. My, how things have changed. Do you remember when Alex Township rose up because of the same thing? The DA wouldn't go in there, but Ramaphosa himself turned up. He used to be so good, right? I'm not imagining it, right? He made us proud with great speeches and walks on the promenade, and even convinced us to beg him to lock us up during COVID. And now the fairy tale is worn off, and we're left with only ourselves and a bunch of greedy politicians that frequently shout, "Off with their heads." Now that I've depressed you even further, let me reassure you that the grass is no greener over the waters as mutiny hits Russia because Putin didn't pay the Wagner Group. Wagner is the group of mercenaries that Putin hired and armed. They're also the same mercenaries he didn't pay. Now that was a plot twist. But if you ask Biden, he'd say to you that things are not going well for Putin in Iraq.
It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war
and that there's always Japan to consider. And that pretty much wraps up being Alice in Wonderland, doesn't it? I'm Tony Curry. Thank you for scratching the surface of a crazy week in the media with me. Eid Mubarak to my Muslim friends. I'm getting on a boat quickly.